Thanks so much for that intro. As said, I'm the CEO of Zoocasa.com, and what we are looking to do is provide seamless service from the very first click of a home search all the way through to getting the keys on closing day. Zoocasa, as mentioned, was previously owned by Rogers, and we acquired it in June 2015. You can't, okay, thank you so much. I'll try a little. My husband never says that. Okay, so we saw a huge opportunity with Zoocasa.com. There's 3 main reasons we acquired it. The first is the brand awareness was 82% higher than any of our other competitors based on organic named searches. Secondly, there was over 500,000 unique searches per month, unique visitors per month. And finally, over $4.4 million of commissions flowed through Zoocasa.com in 2014. We saw this as great news. We looked at the URL as the main asset. You might think when I'm talking about pivoting that, why is this a pivot? It's really just a change of ownership. Well, we took what was really working well with Zoocasa and kept it, and then changed literally everything else. We brought the brokerage in-house, and we started to focus on how to grow a scalable, profitable business. And I think it's really important for us in the fintech world to focus on the profitable business. Unlike some of those pre-revenue social unicorns that are out there today, we're expected to actually make money. In this transaction service, we need to build profitable, scalable businesses. So I'm here tonight to talk about when you need to think about making a pivot and then how to do so. So 4 reasons where you might need to make a pivot. The first one is your market is overcrowded. If you've got competitors in your industry that are doing what you want to do but better, and you have no way to differentiate it, then get out. If your original thesis is failing, you might want to consider a pivot. And this means that the users you thought you wanted don't actually want you. They can't find you. And if they do find you, they're not willing to pay you for your product. If your business is not scalable, this means maybe the market isn't big enough for you. And then finally, if it's costing you more to acquire your customers than you're actually going to make off them in revenue, you've got to pivot to a way that you can become profitable. So take a look at your business, find the pieces that are working, the products that people are grasping onto, and maybe it's a little different than you originally thought, but grab that piece and change it. So next up, how do you do that? How do you shift? So we like to think about profit and not just passion for the product. Having the best product is a very small part of the equation in growing a scalable business. Every entrepreneur, including those, myself, and everyone in the room, thinks we've got the best product. We're absolutely going to change the world. But TechCrunch recently published a study where they said that business-focused founding teams are 6.2 times more likely to scale their sales-driven processes better than a product-centric startup. So what does this mean? Focus on the analytics, find a market that's big enough for your product, and go after it. If you acquire clients online, like I'm sure most people in the fintech world are planning to, then we've got to really, really focus on search. The clients are looking every single day, they're putting up their hand and they're saying, I have a problem, and they're looking for solutions. So start at the very top of the funnel. Think, what are people searching for? That's the problem that I want to go and solve. Start at the top, then figure out what's the traffic that I can get to them. And in this room, we've got a pretty heady problem on our hands. Fintech search terms are the most expensive in the world. In this order, it's insurance, loans, then mortgages. They're a fortune. You're competing for traffic against the big banks. They have very, very deep pockets. So how do you win? How do you acquire this traffic? Well, SEO 101. You take a look at long tail searches. So when you're trying to decide what is the product mix that I want to offer, take a look at what people are searching for. And instead of going after loans, which is incredibly expensive, go after payday loans for truck drivers. There's a couple of reasons you want to be doing that. First, you're more likely to convert that traffic because you can provide information for exactly what they're looking for. Secondly, if you're providing exactly what they're looking for, then you're going to rank in Google. And as soon as you rank organically, then your cost of customer acquisition is essentially free. Finally, when you do need to actually pay for AdWords, if you're giving them what they want specifically, then Google charges you less. So once you've determined that based on searches, you know exactly the market you want to go after, and that based on these searches, the market size is actually big enough for you to sustain a business. Now you need to focus on your metrics. Look at what exactly is the customer cost of acquisition. What does it cost you to get a user to your site, and what's your conversion? Once they're on your site, how much money are you making from each individual acquisition? And you've got to think long time. You've got to look at your lifetime value of a customer, and as long as it's higher than your cost to acquire them, you've got a scalable business, hit the ground running. So the next thing in a pivot, and maybe this will make me unpopular in this room, but I think that disrupting is somewhat overrated. So when we take a look at Zoocasa.com, I look at it, we're in the real estate industry, and banking is very similar. These are long established legacy systems. These are enormously profitable industries. Obviously, they're doing something right. So when we took a look at Zoocasa, we actually pivoted by going a little bit backwards. I said I wanted to pivot to participate in this profitable industry. So what we focused on is innovating in the sections where that laggard industry isn't doing very well and to acquire those customers. But I actually want to go through the process with those customers very similarly to how the very profitable establishment is already doing it. Part of the reason I think this way is if I think that this entire industry is bulldozing forward, well, it's going to be incredibly expensive for me to educate the market, for me to completely change the inertia of the market that is going this direction, to flip it into my hemisphere. So instead, I want to innovate, grab some of that market, and think about how do I set myself up so that when someone else gets out there and educates the market and wants to make a big change, my platform is ready to actually participate in that change as well. So I think this is something that we need to focus on in fintech. The banks are some of the biggest, most stable, and most profitable companies on earth. How can we participate with their profits instead of trying to take it away? I do think that you're much more likely to succeed within this ecosystem than against it. So the last 2 points is really looking at whether you're going to grow or whether you're going to pivot. So when we bought Zoocasa.com, it actually had pretty good tech metrics. It had doubled its revenue year over year. It had 4 times the agents that it had the year before. So by any tech hat, that means all systems go, we're growing, let's keep going. But we look at the metrics and said, well, this isn't profitable, and it will never be profitable this way. So we pivoted by pulling it back and saying, let's cut this down to the parts that are working, and let's pivot into a traditional brokerage service so that now we're setting ourselves up to actually scale across the country in a much larger way. So we had to slow down to be able to increase our growth in the future. And then finally, once you decide to pivot and you find a market and you prove you can be profitable, all steam ahead, you've got to have the team behind you. So we all know in this room that the best team, so those people out looking for jobs, the best people in startup are completely comfortable with chaos. They wake up every day, they find opportunities, and then they just go and do. So you've got to find doers on your team. I've also found it really important over the years to hire the absolute best people you can afford at the time. Because if I bring in a new director of marketing when my marketing department is one of one, it'll be really hard for me to hire over her in the future. It's really important that she's actually the person that can grow the team underneath her. Because as you're looking to grow, your people are your scale drivers. So as I leave you tonight, I just want you to kind of think, if you're working on your startup right now or you're in an established business, there's a few questions to ask yourself when you're thinking, do I need to make a pivot? The first, are you spending more money acquiring your customers than you will ever make from them? 2, are there changes going on in your marketplace that you cannot weather? 3, is your market too small to sustain your scalable growth? And then finally, are the customers you thought you wanted unwilling or unable to actually pay you for your services? So if your answer to any of those is yes, you should consider a pivot. Thanks, guys. Do we do questions or? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Crickets? Okay. Thanks, Alice.
So you bought a Rogers property.
Yes.
How do you make a judgment on the value of the brand, because they were giving a lot of excess inventory to promote it? So how do you make a judgment if this is a brand that resonates with customers versus this is a brand that's being promoted a lot?
Absolutely. So, and that's a that's a great question. So just in case you didn't hear it, he said, you bought a Rogers property. How did you determine that there was actually value in the brand and that it wasn't just being falsely promoted? Well, we realized when we were looking, and for us, it was all search, and it's all based on traffic, and there was a mix. So we knew that that 500,000 unique visitors was absolutely partly being purchased by a lot of heavy ad spend. But we also know that we showed that we could keep at least 200,000 of it by turning off AdWords and with what was already going on with the URL and the domain authority. So for us, I was already in real estate. We already had RateHub. We knew how to build from this base, that we could take this really great asset that had the domain authority that was built up over 7 years of purchase traffic and put the product on it that we wanted. Yep.
Talk about SEO and how to grow up in organic search. But when you moved over to your domain, did you see a drop in organic search, drop ad spend?
Yeah, so the question is, did we see a drop once we turned off the ad spend? And the answer is absolutely. So you turn off the ad spend and you're going to see a drop in traffic. But if you're not acquiring that traffic profitably, so if I spend $500,000 a month acquiring traffic, but I can't actually turn that 500,000 to 500,001, well, I don't really want that traffic yet. So we actually turned it off to slow down over the first kind of 6 to 12 months that we had it, so that we could rebuild the content that people were searching for, that we could rebuild the team that would be able to service those clients profitably. And we started turning our AdWords back on this summer. Okay, yeah.
Or there's traffic and then there's conversion of the traffic. What happened with your conversion rate after you dropped the amount of traffic?
Well, thankfully, our conversion rate went up. So part of the model change, and really what we did was Rogers used to sell the leads across the country, and I believe in real estate the repeat and referral is too important, and controlling the actual team is too important. So when we have traffic now, my client care reps talk to them, and they convert them into my real estate agents, who we are able to hire and curate and train to be the best of the best. So our conversion rates have almost doubled from the traffic that we do have. Okay, do I turn it back to Alex?
Thank you.